we all have wonderful ideas, and it's very easy to start off with the creativity. Oh, let's make a video for this, or let's make a video for that. But actually, one of the things that's really important is to sit down and think, okay, why am I making this video? What are my objectives? What do I want to achieve with this? Because you really want your video to work for you. That's incredibly important. Who am I making it for? Really understand who that person is that you're, or people are that you're making the video for. Is it going to be an educational video for doctors? Is it going to be for other people with rheumatic diseases? Is it going to be for policymakers? Because your messages and how you direct that, how you dress it, the kind of creativity you put in it is going to be very different, possibly for those different audiences. And then thinking about the what. What do you want them to think, feel, do, say? What do you want them to come out of this? And we have a little exercise which is called Who, What, which sometimes we use when we're putting together communications programs. And it's, who are you targeting this to? What do they think now? What do they feel now? What do they know? What do they do? All of those things. What are they saying? And what do I want them to think or say or do after they've seen this video? So the change of perception. What is the call to action? So when you're thinking about your idea, think about that, because when you think about the change from where are they now to where do you want them to be, that will give you a really good start on how you develop your content. So, who's going to appear in your video? You want somebody who's knowledgeable, and you want them obviously to be able to show what they can and tell what they do and what they know. But they need to be confident on camera, and not everybody is confident on camera. Not everybody likes appearing on camera. So when you're looking at who you're going to have in your video, think about not only their credibility, their knowledge, and what they have to participate, but to give, I can't think of the word now, but also think about how they're going to be able to communicate it. If they're going to go and sort of sit there like this, and, you know, I don't really want to be on camera, and they're all shy, that message is never going to come across. And I know sometimes it's quite difficult, because you might have someone really senior in your organisation who says, I want to be in your video, but you know that they're really going to be terrible. So you might have to sort of have some tactful little ideas up your sleeve to say, well, I think, you know, you'd be great, but I'd rather have you doing something else, or, you know, tactfully perhaps persuade them not to be in it. So think about that as well. Two really, really important things: briefing them and consent. You'll all have signed a consent form here, because as soon as we started live streaming and people are going to be seen, you have to have a consent form. It's a written consent form. We've made a little manual for you, which Nana tried to take, and I said he couldn't take it because he'd be reading the manual and not listening to me droning on. So, but it's all in here, and it's got there's templates for everything you can want. And if there are templates that are not in here, please tell us and we'll put them in. But consent form, and particularly with children. If you've got children appearing in a video, then the guardian or the parent needs to sign the consent form, and they need to be present when you're filming. So these are things that are basic, but you need to bear them in mind when you're putting this together. A brief, really, really important. You know what you want to do, you know what people have to say, you've got the vision, but they don't. So you need to talk to people, you need to give them a written brief preferably, just as we sent you briefs. I hope that they were helpful. And then to say, you know, these are the questions I'm going to ask, and this is what I'm trying to get out of those questions. So they understand where you're coming from. Give them the whole context of what you're trying to do, so that they understand what it is when you're giving them the questions, what it is that you want them to say, how you want them to respond to that. And where are you going to film? You can film inside, you can film outside, and Nina, you missed our little recce around the hotel last night, but we went round to all sorts of different parts of the hotel, and it was interesting because we had to look for places that were quiet, where the lighting was good, where it was interesting in the background, that it wasn't going to be overwhelming your shot. So we had a lot of different places that we looked at. So these are the sort of things you think about. And outside, everybody, you know, it's great to film outside, but again, if you go into a public park, you probably need permission. You might need licenses. Sometimes they're going to cost money. So when you're factoring in, oh, wouldn't it be great, let's go and film it in the park. And if you just go, hey, you'll suddenly find a very officious man coming up and say, no, 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 you can't film here, go away. And that's your whole day gone. So it's just these little checklist things to think about. Are there costs? Is there, you know, is the light going to be right? Is the light going to change? You know, you start off on a sunny day, we all know how quickly clouds can come. So it's planning in for contingencies. If you want to film outside, what happens if it rains? Where is your alternative? What's your plan B? Noise levels, have you got enough space to film? You know, you need a certain amount of space between you and the camera, and little things like, if you're taking lots of heavy equipment, is there somewhere to park your car? I know they're really simple, but those little checklists, and there is a checklist in your manual, are really, really helpful. Now, nothing is for free, and videos cost money to make. So we have to think about the euros. Who is paying? Now that's very important, who is paying, because they are going to have some kind of control, aren't they, over their budget. So that means you're going to have to put a budget together. You're going to have to think about what all your costs are going to be. Are you going to, for instance, make a lot of videos in your organization? Is it worth investing in a camera? Or are you going to hire equipment? So it's looking at things like that. Is the person who's going to pay going to want to be a part of your video? Are they going to want to say, okay, I want to see this stage of it, I want to review it here, I want to come along to the video? How much are they going to interfere, if you like, in your creative process, or look after their budget? And when you're budgeting, think of little things like, if you're out for the day, you're going to need coffee and tea and sandwiches, you might need bits of tape. So allow contingency things into your budget when you think about what you might have to pay for. Who can help? Now, I think when it comes to making videos, I don't know if you've had this experience, but people think, oh, making a video, that sounds like fun. Yes, I'd like to help with that. And it can be a help and it can be a hindrance, because you get the people who say, oh yes, I'd like to help, I'll do this, I'll do that. Oh, and then when it comes to it, they haven't got time. So you need, if you're getting people to help, you need to get them to commit and to really be there, and you need to give them a role and a responsibility. So there are some of the things that you could get people to do. Probably one of the most important ones is the assistant and the runner, having someone there who will run around and, oh, I'll get that for you. And when you're busy, you know, directing it or behind the camera or whatever your role is. Now, sometimes it's great to have lots of people if you can really manage them. Other times, if you have too many people and they all think that they're the creative director and they're all saying, oh no, I think we should do it, no, I want to do it over here, you'll waste time. So just think very, very carefully about who you invite and what you want them to do, and again, be very clear about briefing them about what their role is. Deadlines. These are all such, you know, you don't want to think about those, do you? But you do have to think about that. And it always takes, it's like builders, they always take longer than they say, and they always cost more. So be prepared for that. So plan in your development time, your thinking time, your brainstorming, your thinking about your creative process, the people who you need to involve, the budget holders, getting your budget signed off. Do you need to book places? Do you need to hire equipment? Your time to film, your time to edit and review, because what we'll be going through with Marco this afternoon is that you create a rough edit, so you get rid of all the stuff, you know, which you don't want, and you put together a rough edit of the film, and then you go through with time codes exactly what you want to take out, which bits you want to blur, if you want to blur bits, I know, which bits that you want to take the voice and put it under a different picture, where you want to have captions. So all of those things come in that. So there you've got stages to editing. It's not just one edit. And then you might think about as well what you're going to do with your video when you've made it. Are you going to upload it onto social media? Are you going to make DVDs out of it that you want to send to a very selected audience? And if you're sending those out, do you want to have stickers on them with the name of your organisation, the title of the film? Put that in your budget. And the boxes. So there are all sorts of things, and if you think of all this up front, it's going to make your life a lot easier when you come to the end, and it means you're going to be able to stay within your deadline, because you might have a deadline that you need it for an event. Okay, I always think this is the sort of classic one. Somebody running up the stairs, person in a wheelchair at the bottom, you don't need to say any more. That's pictures and words, because video is a very, very powerful medium because it tells a story with pictures. So you don't always need a lot of words. You need just a few words sometimes because the picture actually says everything. When you're making a video, you're telling a story. So it has to have a beginning and an end. And sometimes, as you've read in some books, they start with the end and then they go through and tell the story. So it doesn't have to go beginning, middle, end, but it has to start somewhere, and it has to have an ending that's got a call to action, or that leaves the person viewing your video in no doubt about what you want them to do, to say, to feel, to think when they've watched this. So that's your final message is super important, but so is the first 8 seconds. When you're reading a newspaper or when you're reading a book, the first thing you do is you skim and you read the first thing. If it doesn't grab you immediately, we've all got very short attention spans, particularly now. They get shorter and shorter because everything is in little sound bites. If you don't get them at the beginning of the video, if there's not a wow factor or there's not something that's really dramatic or dynamic at the beginning, then they're not going to watch that video with as much interest, and they're going to switch off. It's like watching television commercials. There are some that are funny, or they've got something really wow at the beginning, and you'll watch them. Others, you'll go out and you'll make a cup of tea and you don't want to watch them. So really think about how your opening is going to be, because that's important. Making the storyboard, I cannot emphasize how important that is, because it's not only important in helping you to think through what your shots are going to be, what you want to say with each shot, but when you come to editing, it will be absolutely invaluable to have that there to remind you of what you want to get out of it, going back to your objectives that you set at the beginning. And how long should it be? If it's a very long educational video, it needs to be as long as it is. If somebody's going through a medical procedure, for instance, you need to watch the medical procedure. But on the whole, the shorter you can keep it, the better. Again, try and pack it in with short soundbite, key messages, call to action at the end, wow factor at the beginning. And that will be a much more dynamic video. The longer the video is, people get bored, their minds wander. Even if you're passionate about everything you've put in it, people watching it will not stay watching it unless it's absolutely riveting the whole way through. And it's very, very hard to keep riveting all the way through in a long video. Presenting it, what to wear, I sent you a little thing about that. On the whole, anything that's too sort of wild and jazzy and stripy and spotty and whatever can be a distraction. So plain, simple. And again, if you're making something where it's For instance, in your mashup, where everybody wears orange t-shirts, I understand, it's called a big orange mashup. You're going to wear your orange t-shirt. It's easy. You don't have to think about that. But if you're making something for policymakers who you want to take seriously, then wear something that looks a little bit more serious. So dress to your audience. Again, thinking back, who am I making this video for? Reflect their style. Reflect the way they would dress. Hair and makeup, as I mentioned last night, you can get under the cameras, it can get really hot, and you might need a little powder. Otherwise, just if you wear makeup anyway, just keep it simple, just keep it to what you normally wear. But try and keep things tidy, because it's always the little things that people remember, the little mistake or the bit of hair that was sticking up. You know, why did that piece of hair stick up on that day? Presenting your video, keep everything short. If you start to ramble, and that's why we've got Kate to ask the guide questions. If you start to ramble, you lose the message. Keep to the message. You can repeat the messages that you want to go more than once. Don't worry about that. People need to hear things that are really important more than once. So you can bring it back into your video. If you start with it, you can end with it, and you can have some form of it in the middle. So think about that. Speak clearly, speak slowly, because I know that once people get in front of a camera, they want to talk very quickly and get it all out, and it's all sort of, but just relax. Just forget about the camera and just speak in your normal voice, slowly, clearly. And when we're filming, Kate will be sitting by the camera, so she'll be asking questions, and you can look directly into the lens if you feel confident about that, or you can talk to Kate. So you'll be just off camera when you're speaking. So however you feel comfortable, and again, Carlo with his years of experience of filming people will help you feel comfortable and make sure that you're talking to whichever bit of the camera you want to speak to. So I'm now going to hand over to the exciting bit, which is Carlo. And he's going to go through the equipment you're going to use, some filming tips, and there are a few wow factors in there. So,
thank you, Esme. Unfortunately, I have to disappoint you right at the beginning, because the knowledge you'll gather here during my presentation won't be enough to make you capable of making Hollywood-like movies like this one. It's a pretty awesome example. However, by applying tips and advices you'll hear in a moment, your video could start to look more like video on the right side here, instead of having pretty bad example, similar but bad example on the left side. When I think about the video, I see at least 6 or more group of factors that make each video good or bad. I will start to most obvious factor that you probably already know. It is about the cameras and video equipment using during the production. It has direct and strong impact on how good or how bad your video will be. But except that, you'll need good audio and good lighting for your video. There is a fourth factor I like to talk a lot about. It is about good-looking scene behind the object. And I believe even with excellent camera and all other factors working for you, without at least decent background behind the object, your video will miss highest grades. Okay, except those factors, you'll need, of course, filming skills, you'll need editing skills, and much more.